Hi, everyone. We're here with another edition of the Defiant Weekly Recap. This is a special episode because we'll have two guests on. We'll have Declan Fox from Linea, a new ZK EVM, which is about to launch soon. And the focus of this week's crypto Twitter drama, Miguel Morel, the founder of Arkham Intelligence. So those two guests will be coming up. But to start, let's focus on the latest news, the biggest news of the week. I'm Cami, the founder of the Defiant, and we have Jeremy and Owen, staff reporters here. Let's get started. This week was huge for markets because there was news on this, just one of the biggest cases involving crypto of all time with Ripple. Owen, you did the story on the market reaction after the U.S. judge said Ripple is not a security. Why was it received so well?
So, lot to unpack, much of which my lack of legal training doesn't allow me to unpack as of yet. But super high level, the SEC went after Ripple Inc., Brad Garlinghouse, and one other man whose name escapes me in 2020. And they were suing the SEC at a high level for offering unregistered securities. There are a lot of suing Ripple, excuse me. And so that's been ongoing kind of in the background. And then it came out that this district judge ruled that at least one of the ways with which XRP was sold into the public markets did not constitute a investment contract, which would mean XRP is a security, from my understanding. And markets loved it. We had Ripple up it was 75% in a day, and I haven't seen that since 2017. So yeah. major move upward on that, and we're still seeing the fallout. I think there's going to be a lot of, lawyers are digesting this and trying to understand the nuances of the judge's ruling. The SEC is anticipated to appeal the judge's decision. So there are a lot of moving parts, and we're still, I think this definitely merits at least one follow-up story to see how, where exactly we're going from here, what this means. But obviously the crypto market as a whole thought it was extremely bullish. And, you have the whole crypto market up 5% in the past 24 hours to 1.3 trillion. And, in addition to assets like XRP up still 30%, Solana up 15, Cardano 10 still. And so a lot of these coins were listed as securities in some of the lawsuits that the SEC has levied against Binance and Coinbase. And so I think a lot of these tokens were riding the wave where it's like, okay, if the district judge in Southern District of which is a very reputable, financial court circuit or jurisdiction. So they're all kind of riding this wave. They're like, well, if Ripple isn't a security, or at least one of the main ways with which Ripple enters the market isn't a security, we're not either. And the market is betting on that. And we're seeing insane 2017 like pumps coming out of that. So I don't know what you guys thought, but that's my high level summary. I mean, just amazing to see how everyone was ready. Everyone was so ready. Like everyone dove in after this. So surprising.
I think it's what you think that the take was like, if Ripple is not a security, then nothing is, because there's this whole interpretation of the Howey test, and how if there's a centralized entity issuing tokens and there's an expectation of profit from the work of that entity, then it's a security. It's kind of what the crypto has been playing by. Like those are the unspoken, semi-spoken rules that crypto has been playing with, and in this case, there's Ripple Labs. There's a centralized entity. It controls the supply of XRP. It sold Ripple to investors and on via exchanges. And that apparently the sale of XRP on exchanges wasn't a sale of securities. So this is just a big relief to exchanges themselves. I mean, that's one of the biggest winners of this case, if it actually, it holds up and so on. But I think exchanges are one of the biggest winners of this case, because this ruling is saying the sale of tokens doesn't matter how centralized they are, even if they're as centralized as XRP, does not constitute a securities sale or trading. And yeah, it's a relief for token teams, projects which have issued tokens themselves as well. And I think it's just was a big sigh of relief across crypto, because like we've been covering all year, this year has been so heavy on regulation that is aimed to crack down on crypto, and finally we get this positive ruling, and so the market has reacted accordingly.
So basically, the entire marketplace has been waiting for judgments from to get some light on how this is going to be going down in terms of the regulatory status of these tokens. And if we look at like Kick and Telegram, which are cases where we also had token issuances that were like packaged together as one same big package of securities, not separating the tokens from the offering. This is different. This is where, like in a Howey test, where they said, hey, the oranges are separate from the contracts on the futures for the oranges. You know what I mean? So this might actually open up some of the interpretations. It remains to be seen. The idea that you could have an institution separate the token issuance from the securities offering might free up other institutions to be able to utilize digital assets. Also, it's a good thing to see that judgments are coming through, because we've been waiting for years from some clarity. The regulatory institutions do not appear to be positioned to be able to provide that clarity. So by seeing judgments come through, particularly with this case with Ripple, I think it breathes a little bit of hot air into the balloon that lifts all boats, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, tide.
Yeah.
There's an analogy there that works with what I said, I promise.
The hot air with the boats, but yeah, we get the point.
Hot air, the sails, the boats are going to something. Listen.
Yeah. So this was the like I said, like the biggest case in crypto that we've been waiting for ruling. This, and then the Coinbase case that we've seen developments just recently. But yeah, like Jeremy was saying, it does bring a bit of clarity on where exchanges stand, and it really goes against what the SEC has been signaling and saying. So, I think that the question now is kind of where does the ball stand? Like, what happens with when court's ruling conflict with the SEC's enforcement so much.
Yeah, those enforcements won't be able to be enforced.
Yeah, I mean, and that's what Caitlin Long, who you had on the podcast, Cami, said as much, saying that, I mean, now you need now you need legislation, right? Because it seems, I feel like it seems very evident with this ruling that there isn't clarity. I would hazard to say that, considering what the judge ruled. So it is interesting that I saw a couple of people saying that this is good for the push on the legislative side to try to establish some clarity about how to regulate digital assets.
So we can have policy via judgment, or policy via settlement, or policy via legislation. And I think we're at the point now where legislation is the process that we're looking at.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I mean, yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so what do you guys think? Like, was this? It seemed to be very unexpected from the market reaction, because right, like usually in crypto we see just like a run up before the news actually happens. Like the market starts to price things in. And then when we actually get the news, then there's like a bit of profit taking. In this case, I mean, like I was showing the chart, the Ripple chart before. Let me share it again. But it just, from the market action, it seemed to be completely unexpected. Like it was, if you look at this, it was just like this flat line relative to the big jump that happened on the ruling. So it was just, the market is saying they were completely unprepared for this. So I wonder if there are funds out there, traders who saw this coming and were well positioned ahead of this. Like, I don't know who the big winners are on kind of the trading side.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, yeah, it'd be interesting if there were smart traders out there who were trading based on legal news. It would be interesting to get a hold of someone who is watching the legal proceedings, because some of these things, you don't even know they're happening, and all of a sudden there's a hearing in California that decides the fate of crypto in 10 years, or for the next 10 years or something. And
true.
So it'd be interesting to talk to someone like that.
Yeah, we shall see. All right, so let's move on to the next headline, which is EigenLayer. We had the EigenLayer founder here on this show a few weeks back, and he explained all the intricacies on how EigenLayer works. But it's just blowing up right now.
Yeah. I could take that one. It was wild to see. They launched last, I think it was maybe 2 weeks ago, with I think $9,600 or 600 ETH cap for 3 different LSTs, and then they just raised the cap to 30,000 this week, and then immediately we're like that it filled up, and then they jumped it up to 45. So just a wild development, and like, you don't, whatever, it's a kind of a bear market, so you don't, and then you realize, like with the price action, people are still watching, people are ready to fill that thing up in an hour.
So things are picking up. And so with that, let's welcome our guest who is on. Declan, hi. Thanks so much for joining us. It's great to have you here. So Declan, as we said in the intro, is he's leading the development of Linea Consensys ZK EVM. Declan, welcome to the Defiant Weekly Recap.
Hi, thanks for hosting me. Nice to see you all.
Hey.
Yeah.
Great to have you.
Yeah, so great to have you. So, layer twos, roll-ups, such a crowded space, but Consensys is obviously, a player to watch. So, would be great to get from you, like the just like the basics of Linea, and how is it different from other roll-ups out there?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, there was a lot of roll-ups, zk roll-ups. So, it's important to understand why do we need another one. And there's kind of three main reasons. So, Linea is aiming to be a Type 2 zk EVM, so it's going to be fully EVM compatible. This is great because if you're a developer with an existing application on, say, Ethereum or another EVM chain, it's extremely easy to switch to Linea and get all the scalability benefits of layer 2. Also, if you're a Solidity developer and you want to build a new dApp as well on layer 2, like all the tools just work out of the box. So it's extremely great from a developer's perspective, which is awesome for kind of unlocking new use cases. The second thing that's really quite special about Linea is actually the sort of zk technology itself. So we spent many years since the beginning of 2019 actually in Consensys, which Linea has kind of come out of, thinking about how to build the best zk EVM on the prover. So actually the sort of performances that we've got and the benchmarks that we're showing are industry leading. Like, this stuff is super fast, which means you can generate zero knowledge proofs. You can then generate them really fast. You can then send them to the L1 and settle them for really cheap. So this ultimately means low transaction costs for users. And in a sort of like multi-chain world, it means, seamless interoperability. So that's really exciting. And then thirdly as well, for those that are familiar with the broader Consensys product suite, we have MetaMask and Infura, Besu, Truffle. Like, Linea comes from a perspective of the holistic developer experience. So actually deeply integrated with all those other products. And, we can get into the benefits of that, but ultimately thinking about not just having the best and most scalable infrastructure, but enabling the full experience of being able to, as a developer, build great dApps and access, mass audience.
Like, super quickly, what are those? I mean, what are the tools for non-devs, this super high level version of like, what does that mean? Like, what makes a developer experience easy? Obviously not having to rewrite something in Cairo or something, but other than that, what does a dev look for, if you're trying to sell a dev on developing on Linea?
Yeah, so I often, when I speak to developers, they're kind of looking for four things. So they say performance, security / like decentralization. They want like mass audience as well, and they want sort of reliability. So, on the sort of performance side, we spent so much time perfecting this prover to make sure that we have a really scalable L2 that settles proofs to Ethereum.
Sure.
On the sort of reliability side, we rely on Infura. So those are familiar with Infura. Infura actually sort of manages more than half the transaction volume in crypto in Web3.
Yeah.
Mainly because it serves, the default on MetaMask.
Fair.
On the sort of other performance side, so we actually have Besu. So Besu is an execution client on Ethereum. It's very battle tested. It's been around the game for a long time. Besu will do Besu will basically be the sequencer, so the sort of block builder for Linea, and it's actually super focused on being extremely performant to get that high throughput, many transactions per second as well. Okay. And then the final piece as well, the sort of mass audience. I mean, MetaMask, right? What more do you want in a developer than having your app be distributed to millions of monthly active users? Like, that's how you find product market fit. That's how you grow your business. So that's more than just having a sort of fast L2, it's the whole experience.
Cool.
Interesting. So do you think that the competitive advantage for Linea is having all this ecosystem of products to just help with go to market?
Yeah, I think it's definitely like one piece. Obviously, when you're building an ecosystem, it has to be you have to have the right technical pieces, and I think we've done that with leaning on our own R&D department of Consensys. This is the same team that helped to deliver the merge, for example, or has built like many different public goods for the Ethereum ecosystem over all the years. So these people know a thing or two. Being able to lean on them to come up with technology, but then on the ecosystem side as well, like you say, like, how do you actually make sure that people can build on a blockchain and be successful? And I think we've kind of come to it from both sides of that approach.
Got it.
Cool.
So what's the status now? Like I understand that you guys were in kind of a testing phase, and now you're about to launch. Like where are you? With development.
Yeah. So we, like, looking back, we actually spent sort of many years almost in stealth in the R&D phase, like literally since the beginning of 2019. I think we first started looking at this problem when everyone was focused on optimistic rollups. We took down the ZK path and the ZK EVM path, which was pretty counterintuitive, or not with the status quo, I would say. We actually then decided to launch a sort of closed testnet earlier this year. So January the 9th, we first sort of launched a sort of whitelisted testnet. Ran that for a while with some early partners, got great feedback. On March the 28th, we opened that up to the public. And it was actually, so it was previously called Consensys ZK EVM because we were just sort of like validating if this was something that made sense for the ecosystem. It was actually the great feedback that then we decided to sort of like fully commit and scale this thing up. At which point we rebranded to Linea. So that's kind of where the Linea rebrand came around the end of March. And then, carried forward to just on Tuesday, I believe, 11th of July, we started to onboard our first partners to the mainnet. So we had the Genesis block for mainnet. We had something like 150 partners or something sign up to actually begin onboarding, so deploying their dApps. And the idea is that, this sort of ecosystem will then be ready and live for next week at EthCC, when we're going to open everything up to the public. So at EthCC, we have a huge live stream that we're going to be doing there, and we're going to sort of open up to the public. We're going to have an NFT drop. It's going to be the largest NFT drop in history. We're going to have Joe on the call, Joe Lubin. It's going to be awesome. So it's come really fast. I would say in like 7 months, we've gone from closed testnet to mainnet, but there's a lot of work that went into it behind it.
So throughout this kind of development process and bringing the product to fruition here, those trials that you went through, were there any findings that surfaced throughout those trials that were interesting?
Yeah, definitely. So we actually ran this quite interesting campaign during the testnet, during the trials, you could say. It was called the Linea Voyage. It was the sort of largest, on-chain quests, I guess, if you could call it a category. So it was almost like a 9-week set of activities where, we would invite people to come and like explore different dApps on the testnet and almost like stress test it, which really helped in the development, because especially as a product person, like I want to make sure, like, can we scale this thing? Let's push it to its boundaries so that when we get to mainnet, we're very confident that it can actually deal with different situations. So that was really interesting. Yeah, and we had a lot of, it was actually really interesting from a just getting people familiar with all the different use cases and dApps in the space as well. Like, I think in terms of awareness for all the different partners, it was actually really impressive for that. We saw really exciting things around account abstraction in particular. So we had 1 week where one of our partners, Pimlico, did over 1 million user ops alone, which I think is like 10x more than any other chain right now. Yes, it's a testnet, and things happen on testnets, but just to stress test that infrastructure was really interesting. And obviously that's only something that can be possible on a layer 2 as well because of the gas cost. So that was really exciting. I think the overall over the 9 weeks, we had 6 million unique wallets submit more than 45 million transactions. So it was great for stress testing, and we learned a lot from that. We also learned how valuable it is to have MetaMask, have your network as a default network in MetaMask. So if you go into your MetaMask mobile or extension today, you'll see Linea testnet, Linea mainnet. And for developers, if you're building a dApp, just by having that means you're much more likely to get access to users. Right? Like if users go on their MetaMask and it's not there and they have to do this configuration, you're going to lose them. Like, you're going to churn. So we also learned that was like super important part of actually helping developers and dApps get a mass audience.
Definitely. Anytime you can reduce the steps that users need to take to interface with a product, it's a boon to developers. I can see that. Yeah, you kind of lose people at every step, the more friction there is. So simplifying that as much as possible. And there's more to do in UX. Like, we all know that, especially on the wallet side, smart contract accounts, like they're coming and it's really exciting. But yeah, we're thinking about that holistically, like scalability and UX with Linea. I just wanted to ask a follow-up real quick. You mentioned the world's largest NFT drop. What's the scope of that, and how are you facilitating it? Yeah, so again, we're partnering with one of the sort of Consensys products, so Consensys NFT, previously called Trium.
they actually helped to deliver there was like the merge regenesis NFT drop, which was a huge one that came out of Consensys, where it was sort of included in block 1 after the merge. This time we're pushing it even further. We're going to have an NFT drop of around 350,000 NFTs, I believe, on Linea. So sort of showcasing the power of, scalability and L2s to do these sort of like huge showcases. So yeah, that will be we'll be kicking that off on Tuesday. We'll be airdropping it to the people who basically helped us participate in the Linea voyage. So that campaign I was mentioning, that 9-week Linea voyage, you could complete tasks and points, and you end up on a leaderboard. And we're going to, basically thank everyone who helped us sort of test the network and get to mainnet by dropping for free those NFTs to their accounts. And then there'll be an open mint as well for other people who participated but didn't necessarily finish high on the leaderboard, where you just have to pay the gas cost, but you can also sort of mark the moment with a commemorative NFT.
Okay.
And they're really cool as well. The designs are awesome. Partnered with a great design company, so yeah.
Oh,
Okay.
nice.
Cool. And I'm curious, just like how, if you guys have had strategy conversations, how do you think about the L2 landscape as a whole? I mean, is it like, because we're heading to this point where I feel like I wake up and I just see there, there's a new L2, not quite there yet, but it's like, we had the layer 1 narrative, and now there's this L2 narrative. So how do you think about differentiation? Do you think it's all collaborative? Do you think there's going to be, Optimism is doing the super chain thing? It seems like Polygon is kind of trying to do that as well. Like, how do you see all that playing out? How does Linea fit into that optimally or, probabilistically?
Yeah, I think, the mainnet that we've launched is an alpha. We specifically gave it that title because whilst it's a great milestone, there's still a lot to do. And, this future that we're sort of seeing where there might be many L2s and L3s is really exciting. And I think it is probably unrealistic to expect one L2 to deal with the whole, execution traffic of Web3. Like the same way, it'd be ridiculous to expect one web server to deal with the whole of the web traffic. So we're really focused on basically moving from alpha to finishing our technical roadmap. So being completely decentralized, completely trust minimized, scalable, efficient things. There's lots of work still to do. That being said, we are going to be open source. We are going to be available to have many instances of the Linea stack if such people need to have their own configurations, or they want to almost scale demand because the L2 is still increasing its own throughput. And the reason we're really well positioned, I think, for that potential future is, again, because of the prover. So if you do have this almost fragmented world where you have many different islands, they're going to want to talk to each other, or you're going to have a user experience which is pretty unified. So having an extremely fast prover like the one we have at Linea called Vortex, it means that you can generate proofs extremely fast. You can then easily and seamlessly talk across chain. So that's possible, but also it is somewhat collaborative, because even in our decentralization roadmap that we published on Tuesday, one of the final stages we're really excited about is this idea of the multi-prover. And I think the multi-prover is the best way to remove training wheels for a layer 2 rollup. And basically what that is each transaction on the L2, each batch gets proven by diverse implementations of a zk EVM, of a prover. Okay, so that means that as long as you have at least a quorum of of proofs that are valid, let's say 3, 2 of them are good, 1's bad, you can still continue the roll up. It means that a bug in one isn't like a game over situation. So it's kind of like Ethereum, right? We have many execution clients, Bezu, Geth, Nevermind, etc. So same principle. So we're actually quite keen to collaborate and have this multi-prover, so the success of the other zk EVMs can help the success of Linea.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Nice. And in this future where you will be open source and there will be, because right now Linea is pretty centralized, right? It's being controlled by Consensys, and the idea would be to open this up to more participants in the network, as I understand. So for when this happens, is there the plan to incentivize participants, namely with a token or in some other ways?
in terms of the decentralization, like as we stated on Tuesday, we're 100% committed to that. You're right. Like things today are somewhat centralized. There's a reason for this. It kind of helps us to make sure the system is secure in these early stages, to be able to upgrade and improve. There are training wheels. The final state looks a lot different in terms of decentralization. So that's decentralizing the sequencer, which is kind of like the block builder, the prover, which is generating the proofs, also the governance side as well, making sure there isn't like a single bottleneck. So we don't know yet what the designs are looking like for this. We're going to try and work with the community to figure out the best one. I think we want to look at several different options. The cool thing about a layer 2 rollup like Linea is for the gas token, we actually just use Ethereum or Ether. So because we inherit security, we can use ETH. So there isn't a need on the native gas currency for a different token. So and we do want to actually say to our community, because we've seen a few people, if you see anything about a Linea token online, then it's a scam. So don't click it. We want to protect our community and users.
Great. I mean, it seems like right now the way to not to scale, but just to attract users and liquidity across DeFi and Web3 is to promise a token down the line. But it seems for you guys, I mean, the fact that you have just like everything working right now with ETH and no stated plans for a token, that you're going maybe a different direction and try to get this critical mass.
Yeah, we want to provide value to our users, to our community. I think there's many different ways to do that. I think with Linea, we have the benefit of the advantage that we have the other Consensys products with us. So like, if you come and build on Linea, you get access to millions of monthly active users through MetaMask, and that integration is only going to get deeper and deeper. And I think, when you see, leading Web3 wallet and one of the leading scalability layers come together, they sit next door in the same building, what you can achieve from a UX and scalability perspective, that provides value. There's other ways we can provide value, and we'll always be focused on how we best provide value. So that's our current focus.
That's interesting. Looks like there's this kind of like Apple sort of analogous ecosystem emerging. It's like everything is plugged in together, and I don't know, has its own little or big system. Cool. Would love to hear just your the long-term vision for Linea. Is the goal to become a network for all sorts of use cases? Are you focusing more on a specific industry within Web3? Like what's the longer term vision for this network?
Yeah, for us, we're really focusing on scaling Ethereum and unlocking new Web3 use cases. We're not dogmatic about what those use cases are. We want to make sure that we're sort of open to what the industry is moving towards. So specifically, things that I'm excited about are having a sort of DeFi experience that is almost like a centralized exchange, but is completely on chain. So it's almost like using sort of a Coinbase or a Binance, but you don't have the same trust assumptions, right? We don't end up with an FTX situation because you're using a roll-up, and users always have the ability to withdraw their funds, let's say. Yeah. And the cool thing about roll-ups, and especially what we're focusing on Linea, is you can have in terms of fast confirmations and throughput and all this stuff, and having cheap transaction costs, especially with account abstraction, we'll be able to do that. So I'm really excited for that on Linea. Also, gaming and social as well, because they can actually use the sort of high throughput, low transaction costs that you get on Linea. During the voyage, we had this social week, and basically we had sort of a Linea version of ENS and a Linea version of Lenster. We saw so many people using this sort of decentralized social, so it was amazing to see. So yeah, we're sort of open to many use cases, but I expect DeFi, gaming, social, and decentralized identity as well to be a big one.
Nice.
Lots of people are thinking about decentralized exchanges. We just had 2 this week of people trying to kind of specifically saying they're aiming for to beat out a sex-like experience. So yeah, very interesting times.
Yeah. So for users who want to start interacting with Linea, or builders who want to start developing their apps, like what's the best place to start?
We have a website, linea.build. I recommend heading there. It has like all the information you need, and it can take you to all the places that you would need to get answers to certain questions. If you're a user, you can learn more about the protocol, the different dApps that are deployed on Linea. If you're a developer and you're looking to build on Linea, we have a place for you where you can register your interest, and someone from the team will get out to you. If you're interested in funding or anything like that, there's also a form you can fill out where we can help provide a sort of financial and technical support to build on Linea. Of course, in all the places like Twitter, Discord. We also have a community forum. So if you're more on the sort of technical or research side, or you just have some feedback, then drop it in there, and someone from our team will get back to you, and we can start an interesting discussion with the community.
Awesome. All right. Any other questions, Jeremy and Owen?
Oh, I think we gotta keep it moving, I guess.
We're looking forward to see how these decentralized identifiers, add to the value of account security and allowing people to show who they are without divulging that information to the public.
Mm-hmm. Nice, Declan. Thank you so much for joining us, and yeah, we'll be looking forward to seeing how Linea continues to develop, and excited to see how the biggest NFT drop in history goes next week.
Yeah,
maybe I'll see you in Paris.
Yes, I'll be in Paris. So
awesome.
See you there.
All right.
Cheers. Thank you.
Bye.
See you.
Okay. There we go. That was great to have Declan on for Linea, and then now we have our next guest, Miguel. Hi, Miguel. Welcome. Thanks so much for joining us. So there's Miguel Morel, the founder and CEO of Arkham Intelligence, a data analytics company that was really in the eye of the storm this week. So very brief background, but then Miguel will, tell us about everything himself. But Arkham started this marketplace that will allow people to buy and sell on-chain research and data about cryptos and blockchain research. This marketplace called Arkham Intel Exchange has a native token, ARKM, and this token will be used to incentivize this information exchange. It seems pretty, benign, but the crypto community really responded forcefully. There was a big backlash because it was perceived as though Arkham was incentivizing users in crypto to snitch on each other or to dox each other. So, the project was called dox to earn, snitch to earn, and it was this whole controversy around it. So, Miguel, it's great to have you here on the show to respond to all the questions, respond to the controversy, potentially clear things up or not. Maybe, this is the idea of the program. But maybe we can just start by maybe, just like in your, just like give us the breakdown of the program and how you respond to this criticism.
Yeah, well, thank you very much for having me on the show. So I founded Arkham in 2020 with the idea to try and bring additional transparency to the cryptocurrency space and to try and actually understand more about what was going on chain. One of the things that I thought was very funny about crypto was that all of these assets that everybody was trading and more importantly investing in was built on top of this public blockchain, and it was all publicly available information. And so at least in 2020, I thought it was very interesting that like the best block explorer, let's say something like an Etherscan, was still so limited in terms of the information that it provided to users and in terms of its level of complexity in understanding what sort of on-chain transactions were going on. And so we spent 2 years building the Arkham data platform, which went into beta in August 2022, and to date has a couple 100,000 users using it, where you can run searches for on-chain information and entities that are making transactions across cryptocurrencies. And of course, as you mentioned, we launched the Arkham Intel exchange, basically with the vision towards decentralizing this sleuthing and this on-chain analysis and this research and this labeling away from the Arkham company and from the systems that we've built to do on-chain analysis, and from our own internal analyst team to the community. But I figured that, there was no way that we could do this at scale and that people would contribute all of this alpha and all of this work and all of this analysis if there wasn't a way for them to make money off of it. And so creating a marketplace for it seemed like one of the best things that we could do. And I think that as a whole, people kind of jumped to many conclusions about what the marketplace would be used for and how the Intel exchange would work, based off of a 30-second advertisement that we released on Twitter. And I think over time now, as we begin to clear up more about what's actually going to be live on the Arkham Intel exchange, and more importantly, once it actually comes online and people see the sorts of bounties that are on there, they'll realize that it's a place for trading on-chain research, it's a place for sharing alpha and getting paid for it, and more importantly, it's a place for bringing transparency and trying to prevent more scams, frauds, and exploits, rug pulls in a space that is so terribly plagued with that.
Miguel, thank you, by the way, for joining us today. I wanted to ask, given some of the controversy with the launch of this product and announcement, are there things that you would change in terms of how you roll the program out now?
No, absolutely not. I think that, obviously we made a very big splash. I think that on net, big splashes are good for your company, right? Like you have more people paying attention to what you're doing. You have more people who are aware of your product. That day alone, we gained, tens of thousands of users. And as a whole, we've been gaining over 100,000 users this week as a result of that announcement, presumably, right? And so, this week alone, we gained more users than we had in the entire 7 months of our beta program, right? And so I think that that's a massive success, and all of the misinformation and things that are not clear, and all of the, jumping to conclusions and speculation about the negative externalities of the Arkham Intel exchange are not real, and we're going to clear them up. And more importantly, once it's actually live, people will see that all of those concerns, are completely assuaged, and there's no reason to be worried.
So I guess like the focus should be, or what you're aiming the focus to be on this information exchange is research and information on bad actors and exploits, not just giving information about random blockchain users, because I think that's what was maybe perceived.
Correct. That, so essentially, and there are actually two forces at play for that. The first force is actually, Arkham as a whole not allowing that information to be published on the Intel exchange and on the marketplace. Today, we actually published a guideline on our Twitter, which anybody can find now. It should be at the top of our page, that essentially, dictates what will and will not be allowed on the Arkham Intel exchange. And I can actually read it to you guys now. So the sorts of things that are allowed include publicly verifiable data, uncovering scams, hacks, and other bad behavior, identifying major players, market movement analysis, sources of alpha. The things that are not allowed are private data, personal data such as physical addresses, phone numbers, and other personal identifiable information, revenge posting, harassment, anything not relevant to on-chain activity, and certainly not anything unverifiable with public information. And so I think that, this list is not exhaustive. We will continue to update it in accordance with, what the community's feedback is and what we see as how to continue instilling safety and trust in the platform over time, right? We haven't even launched yet, as I mentioned. When we do launch, it'll only be a V1. And over time, we're going to try to do our best. But the second big force that I would mention is there's no market for this very small, information about small players and normal kind of people. What there is a market for is what large hedge funds are doing, what exchanges are doing, whether an exchange is insolvent, whether a large market maker is dumping tokens of a promising project. This is the thing that hundreds of thousands of people are interested in. This is the thing that when there is a big kind of controversy in the space, like for example, around the solvency as an exchange, as I mentioned before, people are going to want to dig into that, and they're going to be willing to put up bounties for it. And so even from an economics perspective, sometimes people say, well, the company has an incentive to, also dox regular users because they can make money off of it. It's not true. I honestly do. My position is nobody's going to pay for that. And even if they would, it's a relatively small sum. There's no reason for us to do it. The big thing is to focus on the whales, because that is where the majority of the interest from the community comes from. And therefore, that's where the economic incentives are aligned.
I think there is a point to be argued, though. There are certain whales, so to speak, that are not these like high net worth individuals or family offices. They're people that are attempting to maintain their privacy. And some of the criticism or contention was that these on-chain metrics, if they are aligned with somebody's identity or something along those lines, that some of these metrics could then be used to deobfuscate somebody's privacy in a way that could be potentially malicious. How would you respond to that?
I think the way I would respond to it is that, while I wish that there may be a very clear-cut answer, the reality is, like there is with, a large number of technological breakthroughs that can happen in technology. The reality is that the answer is significantly more nuanced. So to give you an example, we cannot make blanket statements about, the kinds of individuals that can go on versus not, because there are so many edge cases and so many different kinds of examples. So to make it very concrete, somebody like zkEVM, for example, right? zkEVM, has published significant amounts of analysis regarding people who have done exploits or hacks or have phished or, have made undisclosed shills, on occasion actually doxing the person and stating, who they are, what project they're a part of, in a way for people to be able to understand who was behind that particular kind of bad behavior, and has even gone as far as cooperating or endorsing the fact that, the government has stepped in or the police have stepped in order to arrest a person or launched an investigation or cause them to be charged, right? And the community tends to applaud this kind of info, right? But then when another one of these, potential bad actors then dogs zkEVM, then it caused an outrage, right? And I think that that's very fair. I think it's fair to, go, and if somebody is conducting very bad behavior and it's very much verifiable in public with public information, to reveal who that person is in order to help protect other users. But if somebody is doing good, you should not do that. And so, there are situations where, you need to apply some nuance, and you need to think, very carefully about what sort of information should be allowed on versus not. And I think most of the time it's a question of whether or not it's in the interest of the public, and whether or not it's a public good to do so. And sometimes it can be a bit of a mixed bag. There's a question of, if there's a big project and there's controversy about, that project potentially being fraudulent or people making misrepresentations or claims, and, that is happening, say, to the project founder, and the project founder holds $1 billion in tokens, there's a question like, should that be revealed or not, right? And it really just comes down to, is it in the public interest? Is it, a public good for people to know what's going on behind that information?
But is Arkham then making that determination, and what puts Arkham in the position to make that determination?
So we actually have a decentralized governance structure, which can be read in the white paper, where as part of these very critical decisions, so say a situation where a bounty has been approved that seems relevant to the public, seems like a public good, and people are very much interested in knowing, who is this, very large whale? And then somebody makes a submission, and it turns out, it's some sort of completely normal person, but there's a bunch of controversy in the space. In that situation, we would defer away from making a decision, as a whole, and the Arkham Foundation would defer from making a decision, and instead would make a decentralized governance proposal, and then let the community vote on whether or not it makes sense to reveal the identity of that whale, given the activity that's actually going on, right? And so at that point, it's out of our hands, and it's up to the crypto community as a whole to make a decision about whether or not it's in the public interest for that information to be revealed, especially given that, as I mentioned before, given the guidelines, all of the information would come from only publicly available sources that one could independently verify, assuming that it's not being done, for example, for harassment purposes, but rather there's a real reason why that bounty was posted in the first place.
But isn't it? Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Jeremy.
Well, isn't it true, though, that somebody might be able to make all that information publicly available, and then after the fact, it could be utilized in a malicious way? And
it's a good question.
That you're enabling that type of behavior by creating this.
Again, yes, I think that there's a lot of nuance. I think that there's a lot of edge cases. I can't write up in a document every single possible source of information. I can't write in a document every kind of edge case that could plausibly exist regarding where these pieces of information come from. It'll be assessed on a case-by-case basis. I think in a situation where you just mentioned, the bounty goes up, then somebody like doxes the person elsewhere on the internet and then tries to find a loophole of, well, now it's public because I doxed it elsewhere on the internet. I think that's a situation where one could reasonably look at that and say, look, this wasn't truly public information. Somebody took private information and then made it public in order to try to make the submission. Therefore, we're not going to let it go through. This looks more like blackmail and harassment than somebody actually doing on-chain analytics and analysis.
Well, I worry that perhaps some of the, and again, this is the criticism, not necessarily from me, but some of the perception is that perhaps this program will facilitate some of that activity. And so I would wonder again, like, is this the type of thing that you might look at changing in the future before rolling it out, or is it something that you're committed to?
Well, I can't. Well, first of all, we're definitely launching it, right? And I think that it's very good for the community, and I think it's very much a mixed bag whether or not people think it's super positive or whether or not they criticize it, right? There are many people in my DMs who maybe don't want to speak publicly, or they find it embarrassing to say that they've been hacked, they've been exploited, they've been defrauded by bad actors, by shillers, by influencers in the space who didn't disclose stuff, and then they lost their life savings, and they're saying thank you for building this, thank you for building something that will finally cause other people to expose all of the negative activity and all of the fraud that is happening in this space, right? And that's the reason why we're doing this in the first place. I don't want to come on and claim that my product may not have negative externalities. That's not what I'm going to do. I think any breakthrough technology, many people criticize it for potentially having negative externalities, right? I think a bunch of like computer generated like AI videos, for example, are the kind of things where people said, well, now everybody's going to make deep fakes. What if somebody like goes out and then makes a deep fake of a president launching like a nuclear bomb or something, and it's not real, and then people panic, and then it causes like this massive disturbance in the market, or these are things with negative externality. ChatGPT, another one where people were saying, okay, well, how am I supposed to know now that you can create very human-like content at scale and post it on the internet? How do I know what's misinformation, disinformation from an AI versus real human content? What if all the content on the internet, like 99% of it now becomes computer generated because the AIs can just write, enormous amounts of content without human beings? What if it, makes everybody unemployed, right? Like, these are very important questions that, require nuance and require somebody thinking them through and adding trust and safety guidelines for how their technology can be used and how it cannot be used. I think those companies have all done great jobs at that, seeing as ChatGPT hasn't destroyed the world yet. And I think that the Arkham Intel exchange will be very similar.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're all here in crypto. We're all proponents of new tech. We think new tech is a net positive for the world. And obviously, bringing transparency around blockchain data and especially around bad actors and exploits is a net positive. So I think it's interesting what you were saying, that these bounties will be put up to decentralized governance when there's a dispute. Maybe there needs to be a buffer between the time that the bounty is posted and the time that it actually gets approved to allow for community discussion. But I know that you have a hard stop, and we haven't talked about the Arkham token, which I think our listeners will be interested in. What's the latest on that? Like, you announced an airdrop. Like, what are the steps for those interested?
So one quick note: there is a 30-day buffer between submissions and when they can actually go live. So the bounties actually have a timer on them, and people can make submissions during that time, and that's also the amount of time until the submission can actually go live if it's been verified. Regarding the airdrop, people can go on ArkhamIntelligence.com and using their Arkham account, they can actually make a claim in order to become part of that decentralized governance community within it. And then also additionally, they're able to use it in order to post bounties for on-chain information on the Arkham Intel exchange. So I look forward to seeing our community grow over time.
Great, Miguel. Really appreciate you coming on to clear up all the questions about this program. Like I said, I think everyone will benefit from transparency, and I think if this bounty program is used the way you said, with these buffers, with community discussion, and these kind of guardrails around, just like doxing regular blockchain users, I think it can be really net positive for the space. So thanks again for coming on.
Thank you very much.
See ya.
Bye bye.
All right, that was super interesting. What did you guys think?
Well, it remains to be seen how this product will be used. It certainly is a double-bladed sword. But it does appear that Miguel has spoken in terms of trying to ensure, knowledge is out there. This is not built to dox people. It is not built to make private information such as addresses and things like that available. And furthermore, there is an internal, decentralized governance process, which is built around ensuring that the bounties that are put through the system are not malicious. So with those tools in place, perhaps some of the fears that have kind of circled the news of this new intelligence platform coming out will be assuaged.
Yeah, I mean, like zkEVM and other researchers have been doing this for free. So I think if there's like a system, a marketplace that incentivizes more of these researchers and blockchain detectives, maybe it's a good thing and it makes sense. So we shall see.
High fidelity parent data is a good thing. It is definitely.
Yeah. Okay, so that's the end of our weekly recap. This was an interesting one with a bit of news and two different guests. Hope you all enjoyed this and that you can all join us next week for another episode. Thanks again.
See you then.
Yeah.
See you guys.
Bye.